Greetings and welcome to the introduction to astronomy. In this week's exploration of the solar system, we are going to talk about the Hiten spacecraft and its exploration of our solar system. So the Hiten spacecraft was actually launched in January 4th of 1990, and it was launched by the Japanese Space Agency. So we've been looking primarily in this series at those launched by the United States and the Soviet Union. We start to see a few more of the other countries starting to get involved with space exploration as we move into the 90s and then into the 2000s. Now, Hiten was a lunar probe and was actually the first lunar probe in over a decade, first since 1976, which was one of the Soviet Luna probes, the last of those, to explore the moon. Now, Hiten was put in an elliptical orbit around the Earth and actually had a second component to it, which was an orbiter known as Hagoromo. Now, Hagoromo failed. Unfortunately, the transmitter failed, and we actually do not know whether the craft made it into orbit or not. It's possible that it actually is there in orbit around the moon, but just can't transmit, or that it went into a solar orbit and is just traveling around the solar system around the sun. Now, one of the interesting things that the Hiten spacecraft did was it performed what is called an aerobraking maneuver, which is a way of adjusting the orbit by using the atmosphere of a planet. Now, Hiten was in a very elliptical orbit. It went out to the moon, and then it came back into Earth in a single orbit. And if you adjusted that orbit enough, it could pass through Earth's outer atmosphere and use that as an aerobraking maneuver. And this is the very first time this was ever used by a deep space probe. So something designed to go outside of the low Earth orbit and actually was used to adjust the orbit and change the positioning of the orbit of the craft. Now, the primary mission of Hiten was to really explore the cosmic dust between Earth and our moon. So that was primarily, it wasn't going there to image the moon. We'd had lots of images of the moon, but it was there to measure the cosmic dust and to try to study that and learn a little more about that for future missions. The mission did come to an end when the craft was disabled on April 10th of 2003 and actually splashed back down into the South Pacific Ocean. So no longer in orbit, actually came back to Earth and is now somewhere in the bottom of the ocean out in the Pacific. But it was one of the earliest of the Japanese Space Agency spacecraft, and one that was sent specifically to study our moon. So let's go ahead and finish up with our summary. And what we've talked about today was the Hiten spacecraft, which was designed by the Japanese Space Agency to explore our moon. It launched a probe into lunar orbit, or at least it tried to. We don't know whether it was successful or not because of the failure of the transmitter. But we do know that it studied some of the cosmic dust that exists between our Earth and our moon. So that concludes this exploration of the solar system on the Hiten spacecraft. We'll be back again next week for another exploration of the solar system video. So until then, have a great day, everyone, and I will see you in class.